So we're gonna resume our topic, regional varieties of English, and as part of Unit 1. So we're going to review what some of the topics that we have covered so far in our unit. So we have started with some notions related to regional varieties, notions like English as an international English, um, or the concept of other Englishes and world Englishes. We have also covered the historical approximation to the origin of General American English, and particularly one of the most striking features of American English that makes it different from British English, which is rhoticity. And we have started our description of rhotic vowels. So we're going to start directly with the phonological and phonetic differences regarding vowels. And probably one of the most typical cases is, as we're going to see in the phonetic characteristics of both vowels, that words that are usually pronounced with the back vowel "r" there in British English are pronounced with the front neutral vowel "a" in General American English. Well, and this is the result of a language change process because actually in British English, the back vowel pronunciation is a new trend, that is a new tendency. That means that before the 18th century, it was actually pronounced like it is pronounced now in American English. What you need to pay attention to, of course, is the phonetic context of production for these vowels. It doesn't mean that every back vowel in British English is going to be pronounced with a front vowel in American English. So be careful about spelling combinations like AR, like in pot or car, because these words in American English are not going to be pronounced with the front vowel a. But there are other contexts like in which the back vowel is followed in spelling by nasals or lateral sounds, and in that case, and even some sibilants, in that case, there will be this difference between British English and American English. So you can take a look at that in your study guide. Unlike the previous case, this is not a phonological difference between the vowel sounds in American English and British English. So what we have here is a distinction that is called an allophonic distinction because basically the difference is or regards the way that these vowels are articulated in American English and in British English. Whereas in American English, this vowel is pronounced with a front part of the tongue involved. In British English, because also there's a trend in pronunciation, this vowel is pronounced then as with a more centralized way, and in such a way that it is very similar to the pronunciation of our vowel a in Spanish, our cardinal vowel a. So that is also a distinction, but remember that this is an allophonic distinction and not a phonemic distinction. It means that both British English speakers and General American English will be pronouncing a certain variety of the phoneme a then. As I said, this is also a process of language change in British English. What are the phonological implications for transcription? It means that when you had to transcribe, then are you going to use this new symbol that it is here between square brackets? No, we're still going to use, okay, the symbol that which is used for General American English. So it's the same symbol then. Okay, so going on with this vowel distinctions, the next distinctions between the lip-rounded vowel O and vowel O in British English, which are actually pronounced with an unrounded vowel in Gen American English, that is with the back vowel R. Um, these establishes, as we can see, a difference also in the phonemic inventory, because if in British English we have two vowels which are rounded, these two vowels are replaced by only one in some varieties of American English. And I say some varieties of American English because there are other varieties that, although they don't have the back open around the vowel O, they do have a mid vowel O there, okay, in some contexts. And this, of course, it has to do also with very specific phonological context there. And in relation to spelling, this will coincide with words that are spelled with, for example, AW or the letter O or the letter AL. Okay, so the last difference or vocabulary difference between American English and British English then has to do with very specific morphological context there in which, okay, British English has a preference for wing vowels or even omission, that is elision of vowels, whereas American English will have a vowel tensing then. It means that a strong, pure vowel is going to be pronounced in that particular context, although the syllable is is um, is a weak syllable then, okay? That's the case of words such as dormitory in British English that are going to be pronounced like dormitory in American English, okay? So although this change occurs, then we have to be very careful because these, although there's vowel tensing in American English, it doesn't mean that there's going to be a change in the stress pattern. It doesn't change that those syllables in which we have this phenomenon, they're going to become or have primary stress. Okay, that's not the case, although there are some exceptions, probably one or two words in American English. So take a look at the examples in your study guide. And the next distinction is related not to monophthongs like we have seen before, but to diphthongs then, okay? Well, one of the most striking cases there, differences between German-American English and British English, is the distinction between these two diphthongs then, okay? uh, that establish that this is a phonemic difference and not an allophonic difference. Well, the difference here lies in the starting element of the diphthong, whereas in British English that starting element is schwa, that is a central vowel. In General American English, that vowel is the back vowel O then, okay? So this distinction again has been the product of a language change process, because in British English this change of the starting element is actually very recent. By recent we mean uh, a change that occurred probably in the last 200 years. So take a look at the examples. Well, and last but not least, there are special cases of pronunciation differences in British English and in American English. And they are actually called not rule governed cases because they're not a rule where there are a lot of examples that we can actually use, okay, to exemplify this, okay. That'll be the case of words such as vase and vase, okay, or some place names and proper names, but also, for example, the vowel that is going to be used when you pronounce, okay, the letter of the alphabet Z in British English that is going to be pronounced Z in American English. And a word of caution here, because we have actually shown that most of the differences between American English and British English are due to a process of language change that has taken place mostly in Great Britain. But we have to be aware that whenever we talk about General American English or British English, we're talking about like big, broad varieties in the sense that there are actually sub varieties or different varieties of American English. Okay, where there is a process of language change, and that is affecting mainly the vowel sounds. Okay, so why does that happen? Because we know that a language keeps evolving, and every speaker of the language and every speaker of a variety, whether it is a regional variety, social variety, or so on, they produce changes that may be fashionable, temporary, but others that are going to be established, okay, in the long run there in the particular variety, in this case, American English. So we're going to watch now a video by a very famous linguist discussing the type of changes that are actually or currently occurring in American English now.
While the language we speak on the streets of our cities is by its very nature changeable and shifting. For decades, Bill LeBoff and his colleagues have been studying how Americans talk. The result is a whole library of recorded voices and a fascinating discovery. It's called the Northern Cities Vowel Shift. LeBoff believes there's a revolutionary shift in the pronunciation of short vowels that have been relatively stable for 1,000 years.
What we'll be looking at is this mass of cities around the Great Lakes. Here we have Syracuse, Rochester, Buffalo, and Cleveland, Detroit.
How many people is that?
It's about 34 million people. This area used to be the closest to network pronunciation. It was what the NBC standard was based on. And today, it is moving further and further away.
Let's go into that in some detail. Let's show us how that's happening.
In these experiments, we played, first of all, an individual word.
Black.
And then people had to write down what they thought they heard. So you can do that yourself. What do you hear?
Black.
Right. And then in another series, they heard...
Living on one block.
Now what do you hear?
Block.
Well, you changed your mind, and...
Old senior citizens living on one block.
This person is saying the word block the way they say black. So
the shift in this one vowel seems to have a domino effect on the other four vowels, and they all change too. The result can be serious misunderstandings.
Now, this is spectacular.
Bosses.
Everybody writes down what?
Bosses.
Right. The guy.
Yeah.
The bosses with the antennas.
Now you begin to wonder, what are these
the bosses with the
antennas
right.
that are carrying?
I can remember vaguely when we had the bosses with the antennas on the top.
So bosses has become bosses.
Right.
Yeah.
And so this is very hard for most people to recognize.
So is it fair to say that North Americans are in different regions are growing further apart from each other linguistically?
It seems so. It's hard to believe. Everyone says to us, we all watch the same radio and television. How can that be? It's a very surprising finding.
Well, if necessary, remember to watch the video again and do the exercises that have to do with this. That is, taking notes on the cities that are mentioned in the video, the type of changes mentioned, the methodology that used by the researcher, in this case a linguist, and the name of the language change phenomenon. This would be very crucial to understand what is going on now in the United States of America. And with this, of course, we come to an end with the differences regarding vowels between American English and British English.